First Contact's Price. The quantum crystals in Dr. Sarah Chen's lab shouldn't have been singing. Yet there they were, humming with an otherworldly resonance that made her skin prickle. She'd spent 5 years studying these rare formations found deep within Earth's crust, but nothing in her research had prepared her for this moment. Dr. Chen, her assistant Marco, stood at the lab entrance, face pale. "You need to see this." She followed him to the observation deck of the Quantum Research Institute, joining a crowd of scientists staring at the evening sky. Above them, mathematical patterns of light danced through the clouds, forming complex geometric shapes that defied natural explanation. It started right when the crystals began resonating, Marco whispered. Every quantum crystal facility worldwide is reporting the same phenomenon. Sarah's wrist computer chirped with an urgent message from the Global Science Council. As she read it, her hands began to tremble. The patterns above weren't random. They were a language, and Earth's quantum AI had just finished the translation. "We have come for the songs of your world." Within hours, they appeared. Massive ships emerged from fold space, their hulls adorned with structures that mimicked Earth's quantum crystal formations. The Nexari Collective, they called themselves, masters of crystal technology who had spent millennia searching for new crystal worlds to add to their empire. Sarah found herself quickly pulled into the First Contact team, her expertise with quantum crystals suddenly the most valuable skill on the planet. The Nexari ambassadors, crystalline beings that shifted between solid and energy states, were coldly efficient in stating their terms. "Your world harbors the rarest form of quantum crystals we have encountered," their lead ambassador, designer of paths, announced in the UN chamber. "You will surrender all mining rights to the collective. In exchange, we offer technological benefits and protection. And if we refuse..." The UN Secretary-General's voice was steady, but Sarah could see her white-knuckled grip on the podium. "Then we will take them. Your species has barely begun to understand these crystals' potential. It would be wasteful to allow them to remain in such limited hands." Sarah's mind raced. The Nexari were right about one thing. Humanity had only scratched the surface of quantum crystal research, but something wasn't adding up. During her presentations to the aliens, she'd noticed their subtle reactions to certain human handling techniques, almost like surprise. Late that night, in her lab, Sarah made a discovery that changed everything. She was reviewing data from crystal resonance tests when she noticed a pattern. Human brainwave interactions with the crystals produced harmonics that the Nexari's own data didn't show. Somehow, human consciousness interfaced with the crystals in a way their crystalline minds couldn't replicate. "Marco," she called to her assistant, who had refused to leave despite the late hour. "Look at this frequency pattern. When we work with the crystals, there's a secondary resonance layer. The Nexari readings don't have it." Marco studied the data, his eyes widening. "They can't do what we do with them. That's why they're really here, not just for the crystals, but because there's something about humans." A soft chime interrupted them. Sarah's security clearance had just been upgraded. A classified message marked URGNT filled her screen. The Global Science Council was initiating something called Project Heisenberg, and she was being drafted to lead it. The message's final line made her breath catch. "Humanity isn't surrendering its crystals. We're going to show the Nexari what humans can really do with them." As Sarah looked up at her research team, she saw the same determination in their eyes that she felt. The Nexari had come expecting to find primitive beings unworthy of the treasures beneath their feet. Instead, they'd found humans, adaptable, innovative, and about to prove just how limited their understanding of potential really was. The quantum crystals hummed louder, almost like they were anticipating what was to come. Humanity's first contact with alien life had come with a price tag attached. But the Nexari were about to learn that humans had a habit of rewriting the terms when backed into a corner. Project Heisenberg was about to begin, and with it, humanity's chance to show the galaxy why underestimating Earth was a dangerous mistake. The Crystal Gambit. Project Heisenberg's facility, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, buzzed with controlled chaos. 3 months had passed since first contact, and humanity's deadline was approaching fast. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a massive crystal lattice assembly, watching as engineers carefully integrated quantum crystals into what would become humanity's first crystal-powered starship. Power harmonics are stable, Marco reported from his station. The crystals are accepting the neural interface protocols. It's actually working, Sarah. She allowed herself a small smile. The Nexeri had given Earth 1 year to surrender their crystal resources, a deadline they considered generous. They hadn't expected humans to attempt anything beyond basic research. The massive ship taking shape before them was humanity's response to their ultimatum. Admiral James Torres, the project's military liaison, stepped up beside her. The Nexeri cruiser monitoring our system just changed position again. They're getting suspicious of our power signatures. Let them wonder, Sarah replied, checking the latest test results. They still think we're decades away from viable crystal tech. Their arrogance is our best cover. The project had made breakthroughs that would have taken years under normal circumstances. The discovery that human consciousness could create unique resonance patterns with the crystals had opened doors the Nexeri never imagined. While their crystalline minds interfaced with the technology in rigid, predetermined ways, human creativity allowed for intuitive leaps that defied their understanding. Neural link test commencing, announced Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their lead consciousness interface expert. On the testing platform, their first volunteer pilot sat in what looked like a meditation chamber, surrounded by carefully aligned crystals, initiating handshake protocol. The crystals began to sing, their resonance building as the pilot's brainwaves synchronized with their lattice structure. Holographic displays showed energy patterns that the Nexeri had declared impossible, consciousness and crystal working in harmony to bend the very fabric of space-time. They're going to lose their minds when they see what we've built, Marco said, grinning as he monitored the power flows. A ship that responds to human thought, using crystal configurations they never even considered. Sarah was about to respond when alarms blared throughout the facility. Admiral Torres rushed to a security console, his face grim. "We've got trouble. A Nexeri scout ship just changed course. They're heading for one of our secondary research facilities in Argentina." "They must have detected something," Sarah said, her mind racing. "How long until they're in scanning range?" 20 minutes, maybe less, if they spot our crystal tech development. They all knew what that meant. The Nexeri would never allow humans to develop crystal technology independently. Their entire empire was built on controlling access to these resources. A species that could innovate beyond their understanding was a threat to everything they'd built. "Start the final integration sequence," Sarah ordered, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. "Admiral, notify the Security Council. We're launching today." "The ship isn't ready," Marco protested. "We haven't completed the full testing protocol. We're out of time." Sarah was already moving toward the neural interface chamber. "If that scout ship discovers what we're doing, the entire Nexeri fleet will be here within hours. We need to show them what we can do before they can gather their forces." Admiral Torres studied her for a moment before nodding. "I'll have our defense platforms ready to buy you whatever time they can. But, Doctor, we're counting on you to make this work." The prototype ship, officially designated HSV Heisenberg, hung in its cradle, crystal arrays pulsing with soft light. It wasn't the massive battleship they'd planned to unveil. Instead, it was sleek and minimal, designed to prove a point rather than win a prolonged battle. Its neural interface was calibrated specifically to Sarah's brainwave patterns, making her the only person who could pilot it. As technicians rushed to complete the final connections, Sarah felt the weight of everything they'd worked for settling onto her shoulders. Humanity had one chance to prove they weren't just worthy of keeping their crystals. They were capable of advancing crystal technology in ways the Nexeri never imagined. "Crystal core is hot," Marco reported as Sarah settled into the neural interface chamber. "Power systems are nominal. We're as ready as we're going to get." Through the ship's external cameras, Sarah watched as the massive doors above began to open, revealing the star-filled night sky. Somewhere up there, a Nexari scout ship was about to discover that humans weren't the primitive species they'd assumed. Neural interface active, Dr. Tanaka announced. Crystal resonance patterns are stable. You have control, Sarah. As her consciousness merged with the ship's crystal matrix, Sarah felt the universe open up in ways she'd never imagined. The crystals sang to her, their song carrying the potential to reshape humanity's future. The Nexari had meant to humble Earth by showing them how insignificant they were in the grand scheme of things. Instead, they'd given humanity exactly what it needed to prove them wrong. Heisenberg is ready for launch, Sarah reported, her voice carrying the harmonic undertone of someone connected to crystal tech. Let's go show the Nexari what happens when you underestimate human potential. The prototype ship rose from its cradle, crystal arrays humming with power that defied conventional physics. Humanity's crystal gambit was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Wavelength warriors. The HSV Heisenberg emerged from Earth's atmosphere like a shooting star in reverse, its crystal arrays leaving traces of quantum distortion in its wake. Through the neural interface, Sarah felt every aspect of the ship as if it were an extension of her own body. The crystals sang in harmony with her thoughts, creating possibilities that no simulation had predicted. Nexari scout ship detected. Marco's voice came through the command channel. They're already scanning the Argentina facility. Time to intercept. 3 minutes. Sarah guided the ship higher, marveling at how naturally it responded. The Nexari believed crystal technology required rigid protocols and precise mathematical formulas. They had never considered that human intuition could create new harmonics on the fly. Sarah, Admiral Torres cut in. Remember, we just need to demonstrate our capabilities. Don't engage in prolonged combat if you can avoid it. Understood, she replied, though the crystals hummed with possibilities that tempted her to do more. Beginning approach. The Nexari scout ship hung in low orbit like a crystalline predator, its scanning beams prodding Earth's surface. Through the Heisenberg sensors, Sarah could see its crystal matrix vibrating with standard Nexari frequencies. Beautiful, but predictable. They detected her when she was 30 seconds out. The scout ship's crystal arrays flared with alarm, and a transmission burst through her communication system. Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted scanning space. Power down immediately or... The Nexari commander's voice cut off as their sensors finally got a clear reading of the Heisenberg. Impossible. Your species cannot possess this technology. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she brought the Heisenberg into a holding pattern just outside their weapon range. This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the HSV Heisenberg. I suggest you cease your scanning operations and prepare for a demonstration. The Nexari response was predictable. They opened fire. Streams of crystalline energy lanced toward the Heisenberg, following attack patterns that had conquered countless worlds. But Sarah wasn't flying with conventional protocols. She reached out through the neural interface, feeling the crystal's resonance. Instead of the standard evasive maneuvers the Nexari expected, she let her mind flow with the crystal harmonics. The Heisenberg didn't just dodge. It seemed to dance between possibilities, existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously. By the first crystal, the Nexari commander breathed, their crystalline form visibly flickering with shock. What have you done? We learned to listen, Sarah replied, executing a maneuver that should have torn a normal ship apart. The Heisenberg's crystal matrix sang with joy as human consciousness and crystal potential merged in ways the Nexari had never imagined. Your mistake was thinking we would use crystal tech exactly as you do. The scout ship launched another attack, this time using a wide-spectrum crystal burst designed to disrupt any crystal matrix it encountered. Sarah felt it coming through the neural interface and did something that would have horrified any Nexari engineer. She improvised. Instead of fighting the disruption wave, she synchronized the Heisenberg's crystals with it, creating a harmonic resonance that transformed the attack energy into pure quantum potential. The ship's crystal arrays blazed with power as she channeled the absorbed energy into a new configuration. "Final warning," she broadcast. "Return to your fleet and deliver a message. Humanity isn't surrendering its crystals. We're not satisfied with just using your techniques. We're advancing them." To emphasize her point, she released the transformed energy in a display that made the aurora borealis look dim. The Heisenberg's crystals sang in frequencies that no Nexari database had ever recorded, creating patterns in spacetime that their rigid protocols insisted were impossible. The scout ship recoiled, its own crystal matrix vibrating with what Sarah's sensors identified as fear. They had never encountered a species that could manipulate crystal energy with such intuitive grace. Every calculation they'd made about humanity's potential had been wrong. You're changing the fundamental harmonics," the Nexari commander accused. "This violates all established crystal protocols." "No," Sarah corrected them, letting the Heisenberg's crystal song reach its crescendo. "This proves your protocols were never the only way. Humanity isn't bound by your limitations. We're not asking for permission to keep our crystals. We're showing you why we've earned that right." Through the neural interface, Sarah felt a new resonance building. The crystals weren't just responding to human consciousness anymore. They were learning, evolving, creating possibilities that even she hadn't imagined. The Nexari had spent millennia perfecting their crystal technology, but they'd never considered what might happen when you added human creativity to the equation. The scout ship finally broke off, retreating at maximum speed toward their fleet's position. They had come expecting to find primitive humans playing with technology they couldn't understand. Instead, they'd discovered something far more dangerous, a species that could take their most advanced technology and transform it into something new. As the Heisenberg turned back toward Earth, Sarah felt the weight of what they'd accomplished. This wasn't just a demonstration of human capability. It was the beginning of a revolution in crystal technology. The Nexari would return. Of that she was certain. But now they knew that humanity wouldn't just submit to their demands. The real question was, what would they do with that knowledge? Return trajectory plotted. She reported to base, the crystals humming contentedly around her. "I think we made our point." "You did more than that," Admiral Torres replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "You just rewrote the rules of the game." Resonance rising. The Nexari fleet arrived 3 days after the scout ship incident. Hundreds of crystalline vessels emerged from fold space, their formations creating geometric patterns that turned the night sky into a lattice of light. But they didn't immediately attack. Instead, they waited, their crystal matrices humming with frequencies that Sarah could feel even from Earth's surface. "They're afraid," she explained to the Global Defense Council, standing before a holographic display of the fleet. The scout ship's data showed them something they've never seen before, crystal technology that doesn't follow their rules. Afraid or not, they'd brought enough firepower to glass the planet, Admiral Torres noted, studying the tactical projections. "Our defense platforms won't last 5 minutes against a fleet that size. Then it's a good thing we weren't counting on them." Sarah nodded to Marco, who activated another holographic display. Project Heisenberg wasn't just about one ship. While the Nexari were watching our decoy research facilities, we were teaching others to sync with the crystals. The hologram showed underground bases across the globe, each housing vessels similar to the Heisenberg. Over 50 ships, each bonded to a pilot who had demonstrated the ability to create unique crystal harmonics. It wasn't the size of force humanity had hoped for, but it would have to be enough. Designer of Paths, the Nexari ambassador, requested a final meeting before combat began. Their crystalline form shifted uneasily as they addressed the council chamber. "Your species has surprised us," they admitted. "But surely you must see the futility of resistance. Our fleet carries the accumulated crystal wisdom of 1,000 worlds. You cannot hope to match that." "We don't need to match it," Sarah replied, feeling the resonance of her ship's crystals even from orbit. "We're going to transform it." The Nexari ambassador's form flickered with what might have been pity. "You still don't understand. Crystal technology requires perfect harmony, precise protocols developed over millennia. Your improvisations are dangerous. They risk destabilizing the very fabric of space-time. No, Sarah corrected, they risk destabilizing your control over crystal technology. That's what really frightens you, isn't it? Not that we might destroy ourselves, but that we might succeed. The meeting ended without resolution. As Sarah boarded the Heisenberg, she felt the familiar embrace of the neural interface, the crystals singing welcome. Through the ship's sensors, she could see humanity's small fleet taking position, each vessel glowing with its own unique crystal resonance. All ships, this is Control. Admiral Torres's voice came through the command channel. Remember your training, but don't be afraid to trust your instincts. The Nexari expect us to fight by their rules. Let's show them why that's a mistake. The battle began with a display of Nexari power meant to intimidate. Their fleet arranged itself in a perfect geometric formation, crystals pulsing in harmonized waves that could shatter conventional ships. But humanity's crystal fleet didn't respond with standard tactics. Instead, each human pilot reached out through their neural interface, creating their own unique harmony with their ship's crystals. The result was a chaos of creativity that the Nexari's rigid protocols couldn't predict or counter. Sarah led her wing through maneuvers that defied conventional physics, letting human intuition guide the crystal resonance. Where Nexari ships moved with mathematical precision, humanity's vessels danced through space like jazz musicians improvising around a theme. They're trying to establish a dominant frequency. Marco warned through the command channel. If they lock down the crystal harmonics, they can't lock down what they can't predict. Sarah interrupted, feeling the new possibility through her neural link. All ships, desynchronize your crystal matrices. Let them sing their own songs. The human fleet split apart, each ship's crystals resonating at different frequencies. Instead of fighting the Nexari's attempted control, they embraced discord, turning the battlefield into a quantum symphony of competing possibilities. Nexari formations began to break as their rigid protocols failed to account for the unpredictable variations in human crystal use. Their attempts to establish crystal dominance backfired as human pilots turned their own harmonics against them, creating feedback loops that disrupted their carefully calculated patterns. Impossible, the Nexari fleet commander's transmission crackled across all channels. Your crystal configurations violate every known principle of harmonic stability. You built your empire on the assumption that there was only one right way to use crystal technology. Sarah broadcast back, guiding the Heisenberg through a series of quantum state shifts that let her ship exist in multiple attack positions simultaneously. Humans took one look at those assumptions and asked, what if? The battle reached its crescendo as the human fleet demonstrated just how far they'd pushed crystal technology's boundaries. Ships phased through Nexari attacks by riding probability waves, merged crystal harmonics to create effects that defied conventional physics, and turned the very space around them into a quantum uncertainty that the Nexari's rigid systems couldn't navigate. It wasn't a decisive victory. Humanity's fleet was too small for that. But as the Nexari fleet fell back to regroup, their perfect formations shattered. Both sides knew something fundamental had changed. The galaxy's crystal masters had met their match, not in superior numbers or firepower, but in humanity's ability to reimagine what was possible. As the human fleet regrouped near Earth's orbit, their crystals still singing with battle energy, Sarah felt a new harmony emerging. The Nexari hadn't just found a species capable of using crystal technology. They'd discovered one that could revolutionize it. The real question was, what would that mean for the future of both species? Harmony's echo. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth's orbital space glittered with quantum distortions, echoes of crystal harmonics that refused to fade. The Nexari fleet had withdrawn to the edge of the solar system, their perfect formations now ragged, their certainties shaken. Through the Heisenberg sensors, Sarah could feel their crystal matrices humming with frequencies she'd never detected before: doubt, curiosity, and something that might have been wonder. They're requesting another meeting. Admiral Torres announced during the emergency council session. Not just with Earth's leaders this time. They want to talk to our crystal pilots. Sarah stood at the observation window of the orbital conference station, watching as the Nexari diplomatic vessel approached. Its crystal structure was different from their warships, more organic, almost fluid. Through her neural link with the Heisenberg, docked nearby, she could feel subtle changes in the Nexari's traditional crystal configurations. They were already adapting, learning from what they'd seen. Designer of Paths entered the conference chamber, but not alone. With them came others of their kind, their crystalline forms shimmering with academic and engineering frequencies. Sarah recognized them from the Nexari database. The Harmony Council, keepers of their species' crystal knowledge. We have spent millennia. Designer of Paths began, their form pulsing with complex emotions, believing we understood the fundamental nature of crystal technology. We built an empire on that understanding, spreading what we thought was the only true path to crystal harmony. They paused, their crystalline structure shifting in what Sarah had learned to recognize as deep discomfort. We were wrong. The admission hung in the air like a crystal note. Marco, standing beside Sarah, let out a breath he'd been holding. Around the chamber, other human pilots exchanged glances. This wasn't the surrender many had expected. It was something far more profound. Your species, one of the Harmony Council members spoke, their form radiating academic excitement, has shown us that crystal technology is not a fixed path, but an endless spectrum of possibilities. Where we sought perfect order, you found beauty in controlled chaos. Where we enforced rigid protocols, you discovered adaptive resonance. Sarah stepped forward, feeling the subtle hum of crystals throughout the station. We didn't set out to prove you wrong, she said. We simply refuse to accept limitations without questioning them. It's what humans do. And that, Designer of Paths responded, is precisely why we are here. Not to demand surrender, but to propose something unprecedented in our history: collaboration. The proposal they laid out was ambitious. The Nexari would withdraw their military forces, acknowledging Earth's sovereignty over its crystal resources. In exchange, they sought to establish a joint research initiative, combining Nexari experience with human innovation. Your species has achieved in months what we couldn't imagine in millennia, the head of the Harmony Council explained. But you lack the deep understanding of crystal structures that we've accumulated. Together, Sarah finished, we could revolutionize crystal technology across the galaxy. The implications were staggering. Human creativity and intuition, combined with Nexari knowledge and precision, could unlock aspects of crystal technology that neither species could achieve alone. The crystals themselves seemed to resonate with the possibility, their harmonics creating patterns that spoke of new horizons. As the formal agreements took shape, Sarah found herself in the Heisenberg's crystal core, surrounded by the song that had changed everything. Through the neural interface, she felt not just her ship's crystals, but a growing harmony between human and Nexari configurations throughout the station. It's beautiful, isn't it? Marco said, joining her in the core chamber. The way their rigid structures are already starting to adapt, learning to flow with human variations. Sarah nodded, watching as new patterns formed in the crystal matrices around them. They spent so long believing they had to control the crystals, they never considered working with them. Sometimes the most profound discoveries come from simply asking why not. The Nexari fleet departed a week later, leaving behind research teams and a changed understanding of their place in the galaxy. They had come as conquerors, certain in their superiority, only to discover that true mastery of crystal technology required something they had forgotten millennia ago: the ability to imagine new possibilities. Earth's crystal ships remained vigilant, their human pilots continuing to push the boundaries of what was possible. But now they weren't just defending their world, they were helping to reshape the galaxy's understanding of crystal technology, one impossible harmony at a time. In her quarters at the New Earth Nexari Crystal Research Institute, Sarah kept a small crystal from the Heisenberg's original matrix. Sometimes, late at night, she would hold it and feel its resonance, no longer just singing, but laughing with the joy of unlimited potential. The Nexeri had sought to humble humanity by showing them the true scope of crystal technology. Instead, humans had reminded the galaxy of something far more important. In the right hands, with the right imagination, even the most fundamental laws of the universe were just suggestions waiting to be reimagined. The crystal revolution had begun, and it was only the first movement of a symphony that would echo across the stars.